Well, it doesn't happen often, but California Governor Jerry Brown and President Donald Trump are joining forces.
The president is scheduled to visit California tomorrow after the devastating fires, and the governor is welcoming him with open arms. KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan is here with what we can expect to see during tomorrow's visit.
Yeah, these are pretty staunch political enemies, too, so it really took something to bring these together and unite them. If the actual response meets the level of the talk, then victims of the California fires will be getting plenty of help quickly from the state of California and the Trump administration. Two entities that were in a political war until about a week ago, but now say they're united in purpose to stop the fires and bring aid and comfort to the victims, which begins tomorrow when President Trump lands in California. Even as firefighting helicopters are continuing the battle to snuff out the remaining wildfires across the state, President Trump is heading to California Saturday. He was asked about the trip by Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace during an hour-long interview at the White House.
California, the purpose of your trip tomorrow?
Just to see the firefighters. Nobody's ever seen what's going on over there.
The president was talking about officials at the Camp Fire in Northern California now saying there are still more than 600 people missing and unaccounted for. But then the president continued to blame poor forest management for the most deadly wildfires in California history because he said the weeds and bushes hadn't been raked.
They're raking trees, little trees like this that are not trees, little bushes that you could see are totally dry. Weeds. And they're raking them. They're on fire. That should have been all raked out.
What about the argument?
You wouldn't have the fire.
But Pasadena Firefighter Association President Scott Austin told me the federal government is responsible for maintaining most forests in California, which the president apparently doesn't understand.
The federal government has about 60% of the forest land, and it's about another third or 30% is privately held, and local government, state government, it's about 7%. So we'd understand that nexus between what is federal, state, and local. We put fires out here, they manage the forest, but we sometimes have to take care of their problem here.
When the president surveys the California fire disaster sites, he'll be accompanied by Governor Jerry Brown and Governor-elect Gavin Newsom, who have traded insults with the president on occasion, like this from President Trump about Newsom during the midterm election campaign, calling him a clown.
How about this clown in California who's running for governor? Don't think, just think. Well, you got a lot of people from California that moved here, but how about this guy?
But both sides have now called a truce, at least for now, in respect for the victims and recognizing the need to get help to them quickly. Governor Brown and Governor-elect Newsom put out a statement this afternoon saying, "We welcome the president's visit to California and are grateful for the quick response to our aid requests. Now is the time to pull together for the people of California." To which President Trump responded Friday night with this tweet. "Thank you at Jerry Brown Gov. Look forward to joining you and at Gavin Newsom tomorrow in California. We are with you." And taking things even one notch higher, both President Trump and Governor Brown acknowledged that the other may have a point when talking about why these fires are raging across the state. Brown agreeing that yes, forest management must be looked at.
President Trump told me on the telephone yesterday that he's completely behind California in getting this recovery underway. We're going to have to manage our forests better.
And President Trump telling Fox News Sunday that yes, as the governor has said, climate change may be at least partly to blame for the fires.
What about the argument it's climate change, that it's drier, it's hotter, and that that's contributing to it?
Maybe it contributes a little bit. The big problem we have is management.
And Friday night, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders confirmed in an interview with Fox News that the president will also meet with some of the survivors and family members of those who were killed in the Thousand Oaks nightclub massacre last week.
I think this will actually probably be one of the harder days that we've had in the 2 years of this administration, not only visiting with the horrific and seeing the scenes of the horrific wildfires that have ravaged California, but also talking with some of the people and the families that were impacted by the shooting there not too long ago. It's going to be, I think, a very difficult day, a very emotional day. Thankfully, the president's got big shoulders, and I think he's going to go there to offer them up to people that need somebody to lean on.
Now, the magnitude of the devastation in the fire areas the president will visit tomorrow is most vividly demonstrated in some of the horrific numbers. Nearly 13,000 structures destroyed. In Butte County up north, nearly 10,000 homes were victims of the flames. And here in Southern California, the Woolsey fire torched more than 600 structures in Malibu and Thousand Oaks. Juan and Sharon, back to you.
All right, Dave, thank you.